So you're starting off a supply chain career and you want to know what to study and where to study. That's one of the most common questions I get on email, on social media, and here on the YouTube channel. That's what we're going to be talking about this week, coming right up. So I get a constant stream of questions about, what to study and where to study. They tend to be something like, what's the best supply chain degree in Canada? Where should I study supply chain in England? This type of stuff. I'm going to give you some broad tips, but let me just say first up, it is almost impossible to answer those sorts of questions. And why is that? Look, I'm no education expert. I've been around supply chain for a very long time. I have a pretty good sense of what types of training are going to be more effective to help you in your career, but I can't possibly know all the different university courses and so on that are available, and it's going to vary considerably. So let me try and give you some broad advice which will help you maybe track down the right sort of education programs for you. So first of all, number one, what part of supply chain do you really want to work in? Is there a specific area, maybe in procurement, or maybe in logistics, trucks and sheds, maybe in inventory management? Start to think about, do you want to work with people in operations? Do you want to work in sales, maybe in 3PL solution development? Do you love working with numbers? Do you want to get into inventory and full demand planning and that type of stuff? Not essential to know that, because you could do some broader supply chain education and then narrow down on your career as you progress, but it can help to kind of focus on what education is going to suit you best. So what part of the supply chain really interests you? Number two, what level do you want to study at? I get lots of questions from people like, I've got a master's degree in engineering, but I really want to do supply chain. Again, very difficult questions to help people with, because our circumstances are all very different. It depends where you live, where you're going to study, where you're going to work, and so on. But have a think about what level you want to study at. There are some very good certificate level education programs. Obviously, then you've got bachelor degree, master's degree, PhD, all that sort of stuff. But there's some very good lower level qualifications as well, run by all sorts of colleges and local associations. So think about the level of study that you want to do. So obviously, to get into degree programs, you're going to have certain academic standards and so on. Also think about how much time you want to spend studying. Do you want to study full-time for 3 years? Do you want to study part-time? Do you want to do short courses on particular things? All of those are valid. I've done all of those. So, my last formal education in supply chain was a master's degree. I did that full-time in 12 months, which I have to say is probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. I think most people do them over a couple of years. Think about the time commitment. Are you going to be studying part-time? Do you want to just do a course of a few weeks or something like that? So consider that. Also consider the budget. How much can you afford on this education program? Again, looking at the sort of lower level certificate courses that are, and don't ask me which ones, because they're going to be different all over the world. Some of those are fairly inexpensive. I was just looking at, to give you, some context, a master's degree program for one of my relatives here in Australia. And it's about $60,000, which is pretty expensive. A lot of people can't get their hands on that kind of money. So if budget is an issue, maybe start off with some lower level certificate programs, and don't underestimate those. Some of those are really good to get you in, at the bottom level of supply chain. So that's the level. Number three, where should you study? Again, that's a very common question. Should I go overseas to study? There's really another question that comes before that, I think, which is, where do you plan on working in your supply chain career? Let's say you're you're currently based in the UK. Are you always going to work in the UK? Do you want to go abroad? Do you actually want to go abroad to study, to get different experiences? I get lots of questions from people in India who want to study abroad because it's going to help probably with visa applications to work abroad. All of that it's really good questions to be asking, but it raises further questions, because where do you actually intend to work in the future, to a certain degree, may dictate where you want to study. So, for example, I know a lady who's from Ghana originally, who's studying in France because she wants to work in Europe. That makes sense. So kind of think about those kind of things, and also, of course, access to the education programs. Depending on what country you're in, you may have a desire to go and work elsewhere in the world, but will you have access to those education programs, or are you better studying in your home country first to gain sort of a grounding and then use that as a platform to go and study somewhere else? So again, it's not an easy question to answer. I just want to share with you some of the thought processes that you might want to go through. Number 4 is probably a really important step, and that is do your research. So again, when people are always asking me, is this course better than this one? I can't possibly know. There's thousands of different courses in hundreds of different countries. But again, what you should do is to do some specific research around your circumstances. So if you're wanting to go and work in Canada or the US or France or whatever, have a look at programs available in those areas, talk to people in those areas about what's popular, network with people, find out as much as you can about working in supply chain in that country or that region, and what education programs are going to help you in your career there. A very, very good source of information, and this is what I often tell people, is contact local industry associations. So here in Australia, for example, we have some very good ones. They provide training services, mentoring services. Most associations like this are predominantly focused on networking and providing local events and things like that for people to learn more about the industry. So, for example, I'm in Sydney in Australia. There's some very good associations here that will run dinners where they'll have a guest speaker, and there's lots of networking going on. They'll also provide mentoring programs and education. Those sorts of associations are really good to get into if you're in the early part of your career, because not only will you get access and advice to good education programs, but you're going to start networking with people at all levels in the industry as well. And networking is so important as you're trying to progress through your supply chain career. So have a look at the associations in your area, as well as the area that you're hoping to work in the future. And then another key factor which people tend to forget, number 5, the last one. It's not all about education. Formal education is very important. Excuse the motorbike going past. Formal education is very important, and if you're trying to develop professionally in a career, you should look at formal education programs, but don't forget the value of experience. I've worked with lots of people over the years who might have had 3 degrees but didn't have an ounce of common sense, and didn't sort of know one end of a pallet from another. So don't be one of those people. Present yourself to the market, to potential employers, with both some education and some experience. And how do you get that experience? People say to me, it's so difficult to get a job with no experience, and it's hard to get on the ground floor. Start right at the ground floor. There is nothing wrong, with working part-time in a warehouse, picking and packing orders. You'll get to see how warehouses operate, and it's great to have that experience alongside some formal education, because it shows you've actually been out in the workforce, you've worked in the industry at whatever level, you know one end of a pallet from another, and you'll learn all sorts of things just from that experience as well, about how management systems work in warehouses in that example, and all kinds of stuff. So think about experience as well. Don't be overly concerned if it's lower level experience. All experience is good. One of my very best friends over the years, who I studied with at university, Started off just like that in warehousing as a shift supervisor in a warehouse. He'd come from mining, so he'd already had some sort of junior management experience, started off as a shift supervisor in a warehouse and ended up as CEO of a multi-billion-dollar business. I'll put a link down below to an interview that I did with him. So there we go, just a few things that I wanted to share. Not specifics about study this, study that, but some guidelines on how to go about thinking, planning your study and your education. So just remember those 5 tips. Think about what part of the supply chain you want to work in, what level of study you want to do in terms of time and budget, where you might want to study, in terms of geography, country, region, or whatever. Do your research, which is really important, and don't forget to get some experience, really vital. So hopefully, that's provided a little bit of guidance, I hope so. If you're watching this and you have a lot of experience in supply chain as well, and maybe you're later in your career like I am, do please share some tips down below as well, because I know there's lots and lots of people who watch this channel who are on the early part of their supply chain career, and any advice that we can all share will be gratefully received, I'm sure. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.